All right. Well, good morning, good afternoon, good evening. My name is Barbara Ellison, and welcome to Striving to Thriving, Redefining Success. And I just want to welcome all of you here today. You are in for a treat. We've got a great a panel of guests, and we are, of course, going to be talking about striving to thriving, going from striving to thriving, and how we all redefine success, either in our business or in our life, in our relationships. You know what? Because life is a journey, and it starts with you and what you're doing. So I'm just welcome everyone to the show. And if you're listening to the replay, you know what? Share some information about yourself. Absolutely. And then later on, you can share this out to your friends and neighbors and all your friends and family and etc. But my name is Barbara Ellison. I'm your host for this morning. I'm a personality science trainer. I'm a transformational life trainer. And I work with late career business professionals just to get them ready for retirement so that they thrive in retirement rather than just survive, and to know who they are, what they want to do, and how they're going to make a difference in as they retire. So, anyways, and I just want to welcome my co-host today. I met Jeff on another link. He was a guest on one of the LinkedIn live shows that I did with someone else, and he just said, "Ooh, I would love to do this." So here he is. So Jeff, tell us about you and
Yeah,
introduce
thanks to
yourself.
Kurt Schultz for introducing me to you. And yeah, I'm Jeff Sera. I'm a self development sensei and a Reiki practitioner. I support people with going on a healing journey, looking introspectively to see if they're carrying any self limiting beliefs or self sabotaging, and then doing the work to develop self confidence, self worth, and self respect. And I have brought with me two amazing people. Dr. Dorothy Martin Neville, and she is a guiding visionary leader with a lot of history in the world of healing and energy work, and she's created her own school and modality. I'll let her speak to more of that herself. And I also have with me Adele Wang, who is a woman's stress relief expert, executive coach, keynote speaker, author, and all around amazing human being. She's also versed in a variety of healing modalities and energy work herself. Um, what else are we doing, Barbara?
Just yeah, let's hear it. Okay, Jeff sent to you, went to you first. Dorothy, tell us about you.
All righty. Currently, what I'm doing is I'm working as a leadership coach and a mentor and confidant to really support leaders who are moving into any stage of transition. It could be expanding their company, could be starting another company, could be retiring, you name it. Supporting them so that they walk into transition as an exciting spiritual adventure rather than something they are dreading and terrified of. I truly believe life is meant to be lived, not survived. And so I support them looking at emotional, spiritual, and physical health and what they need to do in order to really thrive at the next stage of their journey.
Mhm. Such an important thing. So, Adele, how about for you?
Well, I'm coming to you live from Atlanta, Georgia, and I typically support professionals and business owners. Typically, my clients are sensitive folks who really feel the drain of dealing with other humanoids. So this is things around boundaries or maybe not being in touch with what I want. I'm more aware of what everybody else wants. So a lot of times there's a lot of stress, anxiety, perfectionism. And my work is focused a lot on embodiment and energetic and spiritual inquiry. So I get everybody who has already done a lot of therapy and which is great. And this is kind of like the next level that's opening up because everything has some value. And I think when you do a beautiful mix and blend of that, you get the best bang for your buck. And yeah, I enjoy it.
All right. So, Jeff, what? Okay, Jeff, I'm going to start. I'm going to come back to you. Why did you pick these ladies?
Oh,
Tell us
every
about what.
every time I have a conversation with them, it's just like we have to stop. This is the time we had, and we have to cut ourselves off because we could just talk for hours about all the things. I think we have a lot of overlap in the space we're in, supporting others with looking introspectively and seeing how to step into being more authentic so that you can thrive in life, so that you can be happy and not try to fit yourself into that box that society's created. And then the elements of the energy that goes with the mindset. It's always been great to have those conversations with Dorothy and Adele, either one on one or in a group. We've done this before with the three of us, and it was just an amazing conversation. So I was like, oh, we got to do it again.
Yeah. And I mean, and how it's, I always love to hear the backstory of how everybody got started. So I'll share mine as a quickie. Um, I realized after my husband passed away and I woke up from my widow's fog, and I can vividly remember where I was sitting. And it was like the fog lifted. And then I went, all right, Barbara, David has died. You have not. What are you going to do for the rest of your life? And in that moment, Dorothy talking about scary, that was the scariest moment of my life. Because it's like I realized in that moment that I had no idea of who I was outside of all the labels that I had put on myself of being a daughter and being a wife and then being a mother, then being a divorced failure, and then being a successful wife again, and then being a grandmother and a business owner. And now I'm a widow. Who's Barbara in all of that? And I had no idea. But I knew there had to be somebody out there that could help me. And so I got a coach.
Good move.
joined a group coaching program called The Ultimate Game of Life. Hey, a plug. I loved them, and it was great. I met one of my best friends who was also a widow. She was tragically killed a couple of years ago. But so just dealing with that loss and of the identity crisis. And one of the things that I have found now, as I have been telling people my story, it's like, ooh, I feel the same way. And yet they're facing retirement. And they're especially men, not to pick on you, Jeff, but especially men. They have no idea of who they are outside of their job title or their job description. Who am I? Am I still going to be relevant? Am I still going to be respected? Am I going to be able to afford to retire? Have I been smart with money? All of those things. So that's what now it has been such a joy to bring my expertise and all the credentials and all the things that I have done now over the years. But it started with me knowing that I had to start my own journey to knowing who I was, and realized for the first 60 years of my life, I was pretty much living by somebody else's rules.
Mm-hmm.
They weren't my rules. They were the rules of my family or society. And it was like, ooh, what can I do that's different? And now I love it. I love what I do. And I love and I'm sure all of you can attest to this. You love when you see the light bulb go on and somebody gets it. Yeah. Or when something that you have said or taught them has landed on them. So tell us your stories. Who wants to go first?
Well, Barbara, I just wanted to say how much I relate to your story. And what I think is fascinating is that we usually don't know that we don't know who we are until something happens. If things are going glorious, I don't think anyone is sitting around wondering, who am I? It's right. Usually when a loss, an ending of some kind, because when things are going great, I don't think anyone's wondering about such things. No. And you didn't know till exactly. The event. So I could really relate to what you're saying. And so for me, I was, didn't know who I was until a very personal crisis. It involved work, my lack of fulfilling personal relationships outside of work. I kind of thought it was normal. And I think a lot of listeners might relate to my story that I was caught up in the world of fixing myself. I was constantly trying to improve myself. Self-help books, I was always working on myself. And I didn't realize that had actually started to become not so great, because it means there's something wrong with me. Let me go get another book and fix on myself. So my journey was, I had to finally let go of the self-improvement and the constant, needing to improve or fix myself so that I thought if I could improve myself enough, I could attract love, friendships, all these things. But it was actually making me more unhappy trying to be
Because
happy.
there's always something wrong with you. You're always thinking there's something wrong with you.
That was like a defining moment for me because I thought this was kind of normal. Look at me. I'm reading Tony Robbins. I'm reading psychology. How could anyone think that this isn't useful? But I didn't realize what I was doing to myself.
Right.
And I see this with a lot of people who are trying to fix themselves alone.
Yes.
And that is the biggest problem. That for me, it was a big turning point that I thought if you're conflicted with how to be with humans, because that's how we find ourselves through relationship. And I don't know how to do this. You can't really figure that out by yourself. It's just not possible. You need a human there. So kind of the keystone of my work is it does require presence of someone else to help you through this, no matter how smart, because I thought, I'm pretty good, but some things you need community and someone with you. So that is how I found myself. I didn't know what I didn't know. And I was lost in self-help and spiritual inquiry and going down rabbit holes. It wasn't working. Then something blew up in my face. It was a relationship that blew up. And I finally said, I'm done with self-improvement. And someone came along and said, try it differently. And my whole world changed. And so that's the basis of a lot of my work now. It's kind of a beyond mindset way of doing things, because I think mindset's great. But if it's the only thing you got, it's like all you got is a hammer and everything that in life is a nail. I got to fix this. I got to fix that. I'm like, oh, Adele will give you a screwdriver and a wrench, and then you can still use a hammer if you want to. So that's my story, and I'm sticking to it.
Yes. Love it. Yeah. I totally relate to it. I totally relate to it. Yeah, because we're always constantly, like, one of my favorite sayings is that you don't know what you don't know until someone else tells you something that you don't know.
Yeah.
And we can't do life on our own. We can't do life on our own. So yeah. Oh, absolutely. Love it. And I love your energy.
Thank you.
And lots of it. Lots and lots of it.
Yes. So how about for you, Dorothy?
It started, really a long time ago when I was I was in an orphanage, and then I was adopted and raised in the housing projects in South Boston, and in a little Irish Catholic ghetto area. And I knew intuitively that the women there in the housing project environment, it's usually alcoholism and violence or drugs, that many of them were very abused. Many very, very abused. And I knew even as a child that I wanted to help people who are abused recognize they have options. Why I knew this at 6 years of age, God knows. But I was an awareness that we've got options we're not aware of. And I had my first psychic vision at 6 as well, and with some telepathic messaging. And so, which basically said that it was true that there is so much more to life than what we see. And so that just started me off in wondering, what is all of that about? Because I certainly, coming from an Irish Catholic background, we didn't think about any of that because that was all from Satan and all bad and evil and all this stuff. So, but there was a knowing that there's another reality here that we're not conscious of. And so it was many years later when I was going to get married right after graduating from high school. I instead wanted so much more. I ended up becoming a Catholic nun for a number of years. And in the midst of that, was sent to college. I was not able to go to college or nursing school because I went to an unaccredited inner city high school. So when I was in religious life with a long black habit, they sent me to college. And after that, nobody cares where you went to high school. And so I knew at that point when I became a social worker when I was in religious life, and really was able to start helping people. I was a house mother for girls 10 to 16, and really started helping them see again options, that there are ways that they could do this life, that they could get out of this world that they were in at the moment in a group home, and what were they going to do after. And eventually I left religious life, moved to Manhattan, became an international airline stewardess, and began to travel the world and see that it doesn't matter your culture. It doesn't matter your country, that we are all in this together, that we are all one peoples. And this illusion of the other is an illusion we create in order to feel safe, in order to feel better. And that when we can give all that up, we're left with one human race. And how do we help? How do we help all living beings, not just humans? How do we help all of us together? And so for me, that really became a driving force in my life. And it was years later when I was married, and eventually divorced, that I had a hysterectomy. And I knew I was 32 years old and had a hysterectomy. And I knew that there was a reason, there was something going on. It wasn't just physical, that there was some emotional piece or spiritual piece here that I needed to look at. And that really began my inquisitiveness into, again, service and support, but also, beginning, I think we are our own avatars. We are our own folk, right? And so for me, it was looking at what is this all about? And eventually, after I was divorced, I opened up a private practice as a psychotherapist. And then later on, I got my PhD. I had a master's, I got a PhD, and really began to see in my practicing 42 patients a week for 20 plus years that certain personalities were walking in and developing prostate cancer. Certain personality, even though this was therapy, I would take a medical history. Certain personalities were walking in with fibromyalgia or with breast cancer or autoimmune disorders. And friends were MDs. When I asked them about this, they say it's coincidental. And when I could predict that what was going to be happening, so I went and became certified in 9 modalities of integrative healthcare, so I could truly understand what is this about, because there's a connection here. And I couldn't tell you what it was at the time, but there's a connection to physical illness and what's going on with us emotionally. And all of that's impacted on our spiritual beliefs. If we believe life stinks and then you die, that's going to impact us depression or anxiety or rage, which then impacts us physiologically. So I was intrigued and I loved it. And I went on and as I said, studied. I was blessed with a 6-month waiting list from 3 months in, and people on my waiting list said, teach us what you know while we're waiting to work with you. So to make a long story short, I ended up with a 4-year program in energy medicine. I took the best of all the modalities I studied for my bias, the best of all of those, combined it with my experience as a therapist, and created my own methodology for energy medicine based on the psychospiritual causes of physical disease and disorders. And that became my doctoral dissertation, which is in psychology, but it was on the psychospiritual causes of disease and disorders. And had the school. It was so successful, and my 3rd and 4th year students did medical internships. So opened up a nonprofit because the hospitals really were seeing what we were doing. They wanted to give grant funding to us to do more research. NIH gave me money to do research through a grant, and just continued on. And so after combining that with the school, the nonprofit, my private practice, and so forth, and many other things, we've all got many stories to tell, that eventually I left the country. I lived in the Guila in the British West Indies for 10 years and commuted back to the States every 2 months to teach at my school. By then I had dozens of positions on my payroll. I had a very large payroll with full-time employees and 1099s. And eventually just moved back to America. A sense of entitlement was massive. So I gave up the school. I closed the school. I closed the nonprofit. I closed all my businesses and moved into coaching, and realizing for every physician, my school had lots of physicians, nurses, OTs, PTs, and folks like that. For every physician I worked with, I was impacting thousands of the patients they would be seeing over the course of their journey. So my thought was, as a coach, I want to work with leaders, because if I can work with one leader, I can impact the thousands of people at their company and their families.
Right.
So, so this kind of, it's a long story, but this is where I got to where I am and why I do what I do, to have the greatest impact in this shortest of ways is to work with leaders and then impact everybody they work with.
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly. And what a fascinating story. Thank you so much for sharing it. And that's exactly what happens. All of us, we never know the ripple effect. That is it to a T, because we never know. Like somebody right now listening to us right now can turn around and go, oh, well, I need to work with Dorothy, or I need to work with Adele, or I need to work with Jeff to see how they can help me. And then they'll turn around and impact the world around them.
It's, and look at and I truly believe every one of us is called to be a healer. Those of us who've been blessed, who do this consciously, choose to do this as a way of life, as we do. What a blessing. The world certainly needs healing.
Right.
And notice all of us coming from that place of unconditional love and service.
Right.
And
And
can you imagine if more people were doing that on the planet?
I truly believe that it's starting to get more and more people, just as more and more people are doing things like this, to letting
Right.
people know that they do have. I love that when you said to give people options.
Right.
Like with me, and for me, it started with a question from a friend of mine. She said, "Well, Barb, what do you want?" And I said, "You know what? I just want people to be happy." Well, then, of course, all this was back many years ago. I just want people to be happy. And then, of course, so many people said, "Well, Barb, people aren't going to pay to get happy. You know, that you're never going to make any money as a coach if you're going to talk about just being happy." And I went, "Okay." And I believed them for a few years and then went, "You know what? People do want to be happy. People do want to be happy. They might be calling it something else. They might be calling a loss of identity, or they might be calling it, leadership, but they basically want to be happy." And so my mission became to make happiness the norm rather than the exception. And now it's sharing that with people. It's like, oh yeah, we so need that in the world. And that's it. You find that thing that for me, just or for my clients, that it creates for themselves. What makes your heart sing? Because when your heart sings with what you're doing, you're going to impact the world, because and everybody around you. So Jeff, tell us about you. So that's my little soapbox for a second.
Let's see. Yeah. So I was in web security for about 8 years, just
Mm,
working 9 to 5. Well, I work graveyard shift, so it was more of, I think it was like 10 p.m. till like 7 a.m. or something. Um, but just being in that space of going through the motion and following kind of the set order of things. So going to school, getting a job, following what I thought was the path for what was laid out for me. And then realizing that there was no passion. I didn't care about the work that I was doing. It was like clock in, clock out. Once I'm off, I'm off. And I don't think about work anymore. There wasn't a care in the world towards the work that I was doing. And so feeling that disconnect and then wanting to step into more of what I felt passion towards. And I think the decision came when I realized that I had shut off my ability to cry and disconnected from, like, my physical body and my mind were separate from each other, um, numbing out and disassociating from the things that I didn't want to feel. Any type of negative emotion, sadness, anger, frustration was just like I would push that down and ignore it, to the point that I shut it off and I realized, oh, this isn't healthy, and I've created something internally that's wrong. Um, and that's when I made a decision to step into doing my own self development work and going through my own healing. And in doing so, I realized that all of these things are not taught to us in school, or there's not like a regular process for people to learn this. Um, and at the same time, going through that journey and doing different trainings, reading different books, having different mentors, that was the most valuable information that I've come across in life. And it taught me so much about myself and how I can think even more outside the box than I had been. Um, and that was kind of the pivotal moment of like, oh, this is information that needs to be readily available to anyone and everyone, rather than having to have people reinvent the wheel in the way that I did and go through that journey alone, of being very confused and feeling isolated and not having any guidance to be like, what the hell is going on? And so developing the business around that to be like, okay, this is something I feel a passion towards. This is something I feel connected to, and I've walked that journey myself. So being able to support others with going on it and not kind of floundering and be like, I don't know what the hell I'm doing, and having somebody guide you, it's a huge support to get to where you want to go a lot quicker. And so that's what I'm up to these days.
yeah.
Isn't that impressive? My goodness.
Yeah.
I love that because I'm hearing a theme of the
Right.
humanness. I just wanted to share something that I shared with my audience. I was speaking on stage the other day that the rules of life are changing, and I think this is why healers are becoming so much more important. 10,000 years ago, the name of the game in life, the rules was about agriculture, following the seasons. Life was based on your physical ability to, make things happen in whether it was hunting, gathering, or, but life was very much a physical experience.
Mm-hmm.
Then about 250 years ago, with everything shifted to the industrial age with the steam engine and also the computer, I think. And the rules of the game changed from, brute force with your bod and following the seasons to mastering a system. So that would be, everything became about knowing how to get something done in a system of knowledge, mastery of intellectual problem solving. It was very outcome-based thinking. And also the name of the rules of the game were about fitting in, because that's what a system is. Schooling is very much about getting everybody fitting in. Nothing wrong with it, but it is a system. But now with the advent of AI, all the rules are changing again, because now it's no longer your body or knowing intellectual how to do something, because knowledge and skill, any profession that's seriously knowledge and skill based is going to be, you can hand it over to the bots at some point. And I think there's a lot of anxiety about that. Like, oh my God, my job. And I mean, it's coming in many forms, but this is, amidst people getting nervous, I said, this is an amazing opportunity. Because now the rules are changing, not your body and not knowing how to do something. And people go, well, Adele, how do we prepare? And I said, focus on everything else that's important, which is you. Like, finally, we are out of the sauce. We're lost in the sauce of the system. I have to know how to do all these things, that machines can do. I can focus now on, how to be human. These are things like your creativity, your ability to inspire people, your ability to have a vision or connect with other humanoids in your neighborhood. Like on my street, half my neighbors don't know each other. Either there was no time because they're rushing off to work in a system. But imagine if people had more space to have these kinds of conversations. Like, I think this show is going to be leading the charge for people who go, well, what do we do with ourselves? And us four can say, it's about being you the first time, because the more you focus on that, you're just going to be happier and more connected and more in touch with who you are and more healed and all that stuff. It's an amazing opportunity. So I just wanted to jump in there that I think this is coming.
Right. I think that's phenomenal, because we need, the human heart and soul need to be touched, or heart and essence. I don't care what the word is. It needs to be touched. We need to, because then we know we're experienced. Because if somebody can see us, they can experience us. And that's where the connection and the transformation takes place. I think it's also when we start giving ourselves permission to show up.
Yes.
And much of what we do is having people take permission to show up. And Jeff, the phrase you used was out of the box. I everything about me has been out of that box. Everything I've done was impossible. And, we do impossible again and again and again. That when we can call people to live out of the box, you discover that that's not chaos. Living out of the box is when they get to be authentically powerless, and where they just take it. There's no limit. There's just, it just goes, and they are so powerful and powerless in the sense that there's nothing they're fighting. There's nothing they're in battle with, that they just are. And if you truly believe that we are all, to me, it's the word I use is soul, embodied souls or embodied goodness, that if we are authentically ourselves, what amazing creatures we're going to be.
Right.
So why not take that risk and discover what feeds my soul, what makes me happy, what makes me feel vibrant, what makes me feel alive, what makes me feel passionate. It's not a word you used, Adele, but it's what you were saying. What makes me passionate about living.
And imagine that now we're entering an era where this is going to be the whole meaning of being alive. Like, up to now, it was about being in the system, right? So, Dr. Dorothy, I totally get, we're sort of inviting people out of the box. Some of us are a little bit more out of the box than others. But we've got a bunch of people that are like, fireflies, when they're in a jar, and then you lift them, you take the jar away, and the fireflies don't know that they could fly. Like, so we're teaching people, hey, you can fly. And more of our time can be focused on exactly what Dr. Dorothy, you just said. Like, people don't know that's possible. Like, because back in the day, who thought such things? There wasn't enough time. You had to go till the land or something. So or, you know, a lot of these jobs that I think don't need to be done by humans anymore. You know, people slaving away at jobs that are repetitive in nature. They don't require any sort of creativity. Give it to a bot, give it to a machine.
Right.
So that human can truly use what a bot can never do. A bot can never do what we're talking about. And so the more we focus over here and let the bots over there do their thing, and right now we're in this transition period, like, oh, what's this going to look like? So totally agree, Dr. Dorothy. I totally agree. Couldn't have said it better.
And I hadn't even thought about what you just said, having the robots or the bots do all of this. And it's like, what a phenomenal idea. That never would have crossed my mind. But isn't that perfect that the redundancy can be done by somebody for whom redundancy doesn't kill their soul? You know, because that redundancy, it kills the soul. They just get up and they go and they do and they go home. And, you know, with the redundancy gone, and it's like, okay, what are your thoughts? Let's brainstorm on this. Let's create this. Let's do this. It brings people alive. One, they're heard, and then they're respected. Their creativity is respected, right? And once you have that permission, you keep going. And the permission I use often, it's usually permission from ourselves. But once you have that permission, you know, there's no limit. I truly believe that our dreams come from our soul or come from our essence, whatever. Those dreams come from there. And that when you connect so deeply with you, you also end up connecting with one dream that leads you to the next dream, that leads you to the next dream. And they're always, you know, my first book is called Dreams Are Only the Beginning of Becoming Who You're Meant to Be. Because with every dream you follow, you become more and more alive, more and more vibrant, more and more aware of, I didn't know I could do that. I didn't know I thought that way. I didn't even know I wanted to do that. And then you follow that, you jump off that cliff and follow that dream, and you realize, oh my God, now I can go to the next and you follow another one. You keep going to a higher and higher vista, and you see more and more opportunities for every dream you follow. And if we are in community, we'll always be doing that in a creative way. We'll always be doing that in a way that brings out the best of who we are, rather than in alone. Sometimes we can end up going into those dark holes and get lost. You know, in community, it calls us to bring our best selves out, you know?
Yeah, I feel like a lot of people are secretly yearning what you're talking about, Dr. Dorothy, but they don't know what it is. Like if you've never had community, but you just have this nagging sense of, I don't know, like something's off, but everything looks okay on the outside, but on the inside. And a lot of people have never experienced community. Like it's an alien concept to them. And I think it's time to now do it a little bit more intentionally. I know for myself, I had no idea what community was. I was always performing in community, like saying the right thing, trying to look good, you know, be appropriate and all that. And I thought, but I was lonely in a crowd, you know, and a lot of people are around, a lot of humans, but not really feeling connected. And so this is an art, and it's as much as holding the vibration, you know, it's touching into everything. It's touching into our assumptions about money. I mean, if we're talking about the next evolution, that has to be part of the conversation.
Right.
Because this thing has really kept a lot of people in a box, either working the land or in a system for a very long time. And so that relationship with money needs to be revisited. So there's so much up for discussion now, which is really exciting.
Yeah.
And it's so nice when you see when one of your clients, after we talked about it before, that they just get it. I had one of my guys that one day I said, you know, he was telling me what he does. He was, you know, financial services and all the things that he was doing. And then I said, well, if you weren't doing that, what would you do? And it was like, he had never thought of it before because he was in a family business. And so then I said, well, okay, what I want you to do is, what is one step you could do to, so he finally did answer me. He said, well, has a kid. And that, isn't that fine? Don't you think that's where it starts lots of times? Has a kid. I always wanted to do this. And that's exactly what he said. Has a kid. I wanted to do this. I said, okay, so now what are you going to, what's one step that you could do to take you towards that? One step. That's it. One small step. Oh, he came back 2 weeks later. He was like a changed man. It was like I had given him permission to give himself permission to go, oh, gee, getting out of that box.
Yeah.
Getting, letting go of the routine things that he was doing that was killing his soul. And then a couple of months later, it was like, what did your wife think of this? She said, and he just looked at me straight at me and he said, Barb, you saved my marriage. Because him and his wife were not connecting, because he wasn't connecting with himself and what
Right.
made him special. Made him thrive. That made him thrive. He was just surviving the day-to-day. What Jeff just said, he was going through the day-to-day routine. So yeah, absolutely
Definitely.
fascinating subject, and
Yeah.
so needed. Yes,
Yeah.
yeah. But anyway,
It's that willingness to take the risk to come alive and give up all the things we are supposed to be and all the things we are supposed to do. And when and when you take that risk to just come alive, and I think that's sometimes what we need others to support us in doing, which is why a coach or a dear friend, whatever it may be, somebody that gives us that okay to take that risk to jump in and become fully alive, when you know it's going to make you different than all the rules and regulations you grew up with. Thank God, that it makes you much more natural, much more authentic and real. Yeah. And much more alive and passionate.
Right. Exactly. I know one day my sister said to me, she said, oh, Barb, you've changed so much. And I just looked at her and I said, you know what? It's not that I've changed. I've just come into my own. I know who I am rather than all the labels of the first 60 years of my life.
And I find that, when you're talking to highly successful, which is the people I love to work with, highly successful leaders who are making their millions every year, 5-10 million a year, whatever they're making, 20 million a year. And you realize whether you're making 10,000 a year or 10 million a year, when you're going to work,
right,
you're going to death. You're going into, I will survive another day. I will go through another day. And you say, when were you most happy in your business? And they'll say, back when we started, my friends and I were in the garage, or we were somewhere, and we were so excited. We couldn't wait to get together. We had ideas, we had plans, we had dreams, and you can see how alive they were. And that really fed them until they reached a point of so much success that success became what it was about. And then they worked for success. They no longer worked to live their dream. And because success was the motivator, the money or the positioning or whatever the case may be.
The title or the job description, that's what I work with.
That became what they worked for. And when they lost the passion and the vision, they lost themselves. And now they don't know where they left it all, but it's back there. And they think that's when I was happy. So it's like, let's go back to that guy or that gal who had the vision, who had the dream, because that's when they had them. When it's just theoretical success or money or positioning, then you lost you. The focus is so external that there's no connection to the internal.
I think one of the things I've learned,
and it happens so gradually.
Right.
It's not like one day you were on fire and the next day the spark was gone. This happens over time. It's almost like if you're not consciously aware of it, it's like that. Was it the frog in the kettle of water? It's
right. Yeah.
It's hotter and hotter. And one day it's like, oh my goodness, what happened?
Yeah.
So, this stuff matters. And I think if it were easy, everybody out there would have just be figuring it out on their own. I'll just read a book but there's something about this journey of life that requires, sometimes you need an elder, somebody who has, not to tell you what to do, but it's a vibration of someone who can give you suggestions. Like when we used to live in smaller communities, we used to have people who were technically elders, sitting around a campfire and telling stories. We didn't have therapy. We had community of listeners. And that's the way humans evolved, to be in smaller bands. You always had elders, you had children, everybody's blended together. You don't have like older people, housed over there and children in daycare. It was much more of a community.
Right.
And so at any given time, there were more resources available. Like Dr. Dorothy said, community. So
Right.
now, since we don't live that way, we have to consciously find ways to create what we need to be happier. And sometimes that means in your world somewhere, get a coach or somebody whose job is to help you move through some of these things. There are many ways to do it. You can do it through energy. You can, psychotherapy is one way. There are many modalities. And don't feel like you have to do this by yourself. That was my biggest learning. I thought I was smart. I thought I could figure this out by myself. And that was my hard-headedness. So
Right.
now I attract a lot of professionals who think they're supposed to just, pull themselves
Mhm.
up by their bootstraps from their own depression,
Right.
from their own anxiety, from their own passion that went flat. How do you do that? You know, when the spark is gone and you tell someone just lift yourself up, I mean, that's hard,
But
right? So,
yeah, and you're
yeah,
raised with the belief that you should be able to do it on your own.
Right.
absolutely.
And with that belief, you should be able to do it on your own and stop whining. You
Yeah.
stand up and I can do this on my own and I'm not going to whine. And I may be terrified, but I'm going to push through and get there. Terrified. So, well, no, you're not enjoying the journey because you're pushing through to get there. So it's not about the enjoyment of the journey. And once you get there, it's like I'm afraid to let down because being so uptight is what got me here. If I let down now, it's all going to fall apart. And these innocent, naive, and destructive thoughts end up governing us when you realize I didn't need to get so strong in this illusionary will centers, all will centers, there's no heart soul flow, it's all will. And it's like, whoa, what? That's the stress. That's the stress. Well, we knew this now. Stress is the primary cause of disease in this country. That it's that will of getting through on my own because I can make it. I've got to be responsible and grown up.
Yeah. Yes. And unfortunately, somewhere in our culture, I don't know where it started, there's this idea that it's better to be a giver than a receiver. Like everybody's too embarrassed to admit or even ask. I have clients, high functioning clients that cannot bring themselves to ask for help from anyone.
Exactly.
But they want to be the one that everyone else leans on. So
Yeah.
there's a little bit of this egoic thing that I am the one that supports everybody else. I'm like, and how is that working for you? You feel resentful. You feel like you're there for other people, but they're not there for you. And, maybe it's time to consider, letting other people in a little bit more. And so there's a little bit of a fidgeting because that's energetically a different state. As Dr. Dorothy knows, it's a different feeling in the body. The nervous system is doing something different. I'm like, try to get out of your head and let's do some embodiment practices so you can receive your life more than constantly grinding through it. That's my whole spiel, and I'll keep my mouth. This is like making millions of people miserable.
It is, yeah.
One of the things I found most supportive was like finding ways to stay present. We're always chasing something in the future or living in regret in the past, but it's what's in front of you. What are you feeling in this moment? And then doing the work to shift into, I'm not working towards happiness in my future, but what's aligned to me right here, right now. If I don't want to be doing something, rather than fitting into that box of like, oh, well, I said this or that. It's like, you can change your mind in a moment to be like, this is no longer aligned to me and I don't want to be doing that. Or if it's not a hell yes, then it's a hell no. And not realizing that that's even an option sometimes because we're conditioned to believe, these are the things we're supposed to do, but really listening to yourself to be like, hey, what do you want to be doing in this moment? You don't have to stay in that job that makes you unhappy. What do you want to be doing?
Right. Yeah. And absolutely giving yourself permission. I love that, Adele, about asking for help.
Yeah.
I was an emotion stuffer.
Mm.
Years. And heaven forbid, like after my divorce, it was like, I'm going to pick myself, exactly what you just said. I'm going to pick myself up and go on. Well, then after David died, it was like, all right, I can't do that. I need help.
Mm-hmm.
I need help. I can't do that. And that was such a hard thing to realize that, okay, I just can't do it on my own. What am I going to do?
And there's such a difference between having a need and being needy.
Yes.
We work so hard not to be needy and sucking people dry that we don't even take time to acknowledge I have a need. A need simply says, I know what I need and I know how to get it met. And sometimes getting it met is calling that girlfriend and just unloading or getting a coach and having them support me. And so I have a need and I know how to get it met. And it may be by bringing somebody else in. But needy is that sense of no matter how much I take, no matter how much I grab, I don't have enough. And
Right.
we're so frightened of having that trait put on us that we just disassociate from all our needs. When how important it is to say, none of us can do this journey alone. None of us. And that illusion of independence being the same as self sufficiency, when not one of us is self sufficient, but all of us need to be independent. And there's such a huge distinction between those two that we, any more than we separate from control and power, they're two dramatically different issues. The only people that control are those who feel powerless. Powerful people don't control. And so when we can delineate, I mean, really these words we use in the culture, that self-sufficiency is an illusion. Independent is real.
I love this because right now it's almost like the world has two polarities in mind. You could either be a dependent hot mess, sucking everybody dry,
Right.
or you're this independent chick. I'm good. I can do it all by myself and be lonely as dirt, right? So people are like back and forth. Oh my gosh, I don't want to be too much this way. I don't want to be too. So they sort of sit in the middle, which is kind of lukewarm, because I'm sort of an advocate. There's a third point that's not halfway between hot mess and, lonely by myself. There's a thing called interdependence. It's not dependent. It's not independent. It's interdependent. And I would love people to just sit with that concept, because interdependent means there's a much more of a connection with everything else, that you're a part of a fabric, a thread in a canvas or something. Dependent means, they're like this little leech on somebody. Independent means you're sitting in the corner by yourself, looking good and too cool for school, which is no fun. But interdependent might feel a little bit more, that feels good. I like the word. Instead of trying to balance halfway in between, am I too codependent? Am I too independent? Like I see a lot of people trying to do that. It takes too much work.
Yeah.
Because sometimes we need a lot more from other people. If you're going through a hard time, sometimes you need to take a lot more from other people. It's 80 or 90% take, and then other times you have more to give. So it's not exactly sitting at 50% all the time.
Right.
But if you're interdependent, there's a little bit more of a fabric feeling that sometimes you stretch, sometimes you can give. I like that. That's just my little mental imagination.
Yeah,
Well,
that's the concept.
This has been absolute. I can't believe so much time. This has been absolutely a fascinating topic, and I just love the conversation. So, everybody, Jeff, why don't you round up with everybody the last few minutes, and then I will make sure that everybody's contact information is in the chat.
Yeah, just I told you, right? Like we could just talk for hours. Full of wisdom and knowledge, and it's so much fun. But thank you for both joining me today. It's always a pleasure to see you and speak with you. And yeah, I mean, everyone listening, it's so supportive to have guides on your journey. And these are two of the best. Barbara, you're amazing as well. So thank you for having us. And yeah, I look forward to future conversations.
Thank you.
Dorothy, any last words?
Just, take the risk of living this life. Do not play it safe and survive it. You never get to be truly alive when you're settled for survival.
Absolutely the truth. All right, Adele, how about for you?
I'll just echo what Dr. Dorothy said. You have one life, one shot. Go for it. Yeah. It may not be easy, but it will be worth it. Instead of playing it safe, don't wait till you're 95 years old and wish with a lifetime of regrets. People hire me to never have a regret. It may not go perfect, but you won't be wishing you hadn't done something.
Right.
So you got one life, go for it.
Yeah.
Right. How about for you, Jeff?
Yeah. Listen to yourself. We've learned to really shut off and ignore the things that we need, or even just our bodies expressing and asking for. I'll get up early and, I don't need the rest, or, I'm not hungry right now. I'll eat later when there's time. And we put all these things down and aside, but our body's always telling us what we need. And so learning to tap into that and listen in any given moment, to be present with ourselves and say, hey, this is what I want, or this is what I need. And then reaching out for that support if it's something you can't fulfill on your own.
Yeah. And it is so, and I got to say it again. This has been it is such a needed subject exactly for what we all just talked about. People aren't talking about it. They don't even feel like they have the right to talk about it. They don't want to say, hey, you know what? I'm feeling sad. I'm feeling lonely. There's something missing.
Yeah.
I'm not quite happy. What's wrong? And then for me, it was what's wrong with me that I'm feeling this way. And that was one of the things that for me, it just really cemented my journey. When I became the personality science trainer and realized that I could stop beating myself up for all the things that I wasn't and start celebrating the things that I was.
Right. Congratulations.
Congratulations.
So important.
We wouldn't be here if you hadn't done that. So let us all say congratulations back at the time. Because that's what you did. Because otherwise we wouldn't have this one amazing show.
Exactly. It has been such a blessing to just be comfortable with wearing my bright red glasses and my bright lipstick and know that was okay.
Yeah.
That because I was brought up that, women don't wear bright, you have to be, conservative and, you're quiet. You're not this out there, kind of person. And it was like, and now I realize that people need to hear my out there kind of person. Adele, you're my kind of person. That outdoor.
You're out here.
I see some of Adele's videos.
Yeah. I mean, who wants to listen or watch a show where someone's just like, okay, today we're going to, come on.
Right.
You want to feel something. So
do something.
My favorite was when you were with the couple that was proposing, but you were you were celebrating harder than they were.
Exactly. And so often I feel like that I want it more for them than they want it for themselves.
Yeah. And it doesn't work. It doesn't work.
Right.
Yeah.
They haven't learned to let go.
Yeah.
Right.
And to just go, who are you? Like one of my favorite questions to my clients is, who are you within what you do? And so often people go, what? Okay, you've told me what you do. You're an accountant, you're in financial services, you're in e-commerce, you're in whatever it is. Okay, so now who are you within that? And they have no idea. Because the thing is, that's what they do. What you do can change in a heartbeat. But when you know who you are, it doesn't matter what you do.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And so, this has been absolutely an amazing conversation.
Thank you.
Thanks everybody for watching. Please share out this to if you know somebody that can benefit from this conversation, please share it out. Put it out on your socials, whatever it is, because you know what we've all talked about today. We cannot possibly do life on our own. And so if you're struggling, reach out. All of the contact information is in the chat, is in the comments of the stream. So make sure that you reach out and get your needs met. And if you just want somebody to talk to, hey, all of us would be willing to talk to you. Absolutely, because you know what? We are all in this together. So thanks everybody for listening, and just go out and enjoy your life. Because you deserve somebody to talk to. Hey, all of us.
There I go.
Get free. And we all need to talk to people. Exactly. And we all deserve to have to live our best life. So be out there, go out there. Thanks everybody for listening. We'll see you next time. Bye-bye.
Bye.
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 Bye, everybody.